back with our world lead now and a distressing story out of Afghanistan showing the harsh reality of the humanitarian crisis engulfing the country, especially post-Taliban rule. Desperate families so impoverished, they tell CNN they have no choice but to sell their young daughters into some twisted form of marriage. In this exclusive report, CNN witnesses the tragic fate facing these helpless little girls in this culture where girls and women are too often treated horrifically. The parents gave us full access and permission to talk to the children and show their faces because they say they cannot change the practice themselves. CNN's Anna Coren reports.
In this arid, desolate landscape, not a scrap of vegetation in sight, lies a makeshift camp for some of Afghanistan's internally displaced. Among its residents, 9-year-old Parwana. Her bright pink dress squeals of laughter and childhood games, a ruse to the horrors unfolding in this unhospitable environment. Parwana's family moved to this camp in Baghdis province 4 years ago after her father lost his job. Humanitarian aid and menial work, earning $3 a day, providing the basic staples to survive. But since the Taliban takeover 2.5 months ago, any money or assistance has dried up. And with 8 mouths to feed, Parwana's father is now doing the unthinkable. I have no work, no money, no food. I have to sell my daughter, he says. I have no other choice. Parwana, who dreams of going to school and becoming a teacher, applies makeup. A favourite pastime for little girls, but Parwana knows she is preparing for what awaits her. My father has sold me because we don't have bread, rice and flour. He has sold me to an old man. The white-bearded man who claims he's 55 years old comes to collect her. He's bought Parwana for 200,000 Afghanis, just over $2,000 US. Covered up, Parwana whimpers as her mother holds her. This is your bride, please take care of her, says Parwana's father. Of course I will take care of her, replies the man. His large hands grab her small frame. Parwana tries to pull away. As he carries her only bag of belongings, she again resists, digging her heels into the dirt. But it's futile. The fate of this small, helpless child has been sealed. Child marriage is nothing new in poor rural parts of Afghanistan. But human rights activists are reporting an increase in cases because of the economic and humanitarian crisis engulfing the country.
These are devastating decisions that no parent should ever have to make, and it really speaks to what an extraordinary breakdown is happening in Afghanistan right now.
For months, the UN has been warning of a catastrophe as Afghanistan, a war-ravaged, aid-dependent country, descends into a brutal winter. Billions of dollars in central bank assets were frozen after the Taliban swept to power in August. Banks are running out of money, wages haven't been paid for months, while food prices soar. According to the UN, more than half the population doesn't know where their next meal is coming from. And more than 3 million children under the age of 5 face acute malnutrition in the coming months.
People of Afghanistan need a lifeline.
And while $1 billion has been pledged by UN donors to help the Afghan people, less than half those funds have been received as the international community holds off recognising the Taliban government.
People of Afghanistan will be dying of hunger in the next couple of months, and not just a few. This is just making people more and more vulnerable, and we cannot accept that.
Sentiments shared by the Taliban.
We are asking aid agencies to come back to Afghanistan and help these poor people. Otherwise, the crisis will worsen.
For this family in neighbouring Ghor province, they are trying to sell 2 daughters, 9-year-old Litan and 4-year-old Zeton for $1,000 US each. Do you know why they're selling you? The journalist asked Zeton. Because we are a poor family and don't have any food to eat, she says. Are you scared? He asks. Yes, I am. Another family in Gore province borrowed money from their 70-year-old neighbour. Now he's demanding it back, but they have nothing to give except their 10-year-old daughter, Magul. My daughter doesn't want to go and is crying all the time. I am so ashamed, he says. Terrified, she threatens to take her life. If they push me to marry the old man, I will kill myself. I don't want to leave my parents. Days later, she discovers the sale has been finalised. Another Afghan child sold into a life of misery. Jake, it is just gut-wrenching knowing what these young girls will be subjected to, and just an update on young Magul, the last girl in our story there. She will be handed over to the 70-year-old man in the coming days. It's just a tragic fate that awaits this young girl. Now, if the aid situation is not addressed urgently, the UN projects, Jake, that by the middle of next year, 97% of Afghans will be living below the poverty line, not meaning that hunger and starvation will be facing these people alone, but that other girls will end up like Magul and Parwana. Jake.
Yeah, this is such a horrible story. It's so tough to watch. You know that this happened, this tradition, this awful thing was predated the Taliban taking over again. But how has the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan earlier this year made it worse? How has it exacerbated this problem of families selling their daughters?
Look, absolutely. You're absolutely right. This has been around for forever. However, from the local journalists that we've been speaking to and working with, they say that once upon a time it was behind closed doors. Now it is out in the open. The international community is obviously refusing to recognise the Taliban as the official government, and as a result they are freezing billions of dollars in reserves that would, otherwise go to the people of Afghanistan. They're doing this to try and hold the Taliban to account, especially on their record regarding human rights of women and of young girls. But by punishing the Taliban, it means that money is not getting to Afghans most vulnerable, which obviously includes the girls in our piece, Jake.
Really tough to watch. Anna Corin, thank you so much for that important story.
من اسمي سمیه، پدرم امین الله. به مکتب میرفتم صنف 7 بودم. 10 روز بمونده بود که امتحانا سالم نخوابم که برم صنف 8. من عروسی که بکردم دیگه نگذاشتم. هر چی که من گفتم میرم به مکتب میرم. امی خسول ما خوشی ما همگی گفتن که اگه تو بری به مکتب ما کارا مارکی میکنم، موتور بخریدیم و نمیگذاریم. هم که گفتم میرم مکتب و شومه و خوشومه و همه مرمه زدن که تو نمایی که بری به مکتب. بعد از عروسی هم شوهر من خود بدور مادر پیش میکرد، پیار پیش میکرد، این مرمه زد دو میداد. باز همه به پدر مادر خود چی نمیگفتم، به هیچ کسی چی نمیگفتم. باز هم به مو رقم تیر میکردم. خود اینا که همه بی سوادن، این هم گفتم ما طور نمیگذارم مکتب. اگه تو بری کارا مارکی میکنه. 15 نفر بودن، همینجا دیگ به سر دیگ دون بود و همیته هم خونه نامیته اونی. اگه بشه شما بریم نگاه کنه خیلی خونه گندی هم دارن. از من 2.5 لک بود پیشکش من. به می 2.5 لک اون خدا شاهده که پیهن همال 2 لک 3 لک به خونه نمال کرد. بستره بداد، طلا به من بداد، هرچی به من پدرم بداد. نه به من هرچی میزدم، به مشت و به لغت و به چپات که ایت مثلا اثری نمونه به جان، به شلاق ایت چیزا نمیزدن که اثری بمونه. همیت به مشت و لغت و هردم من میزدم و دو میدادم فاش میگفتم. مکتب خوب همه می دوران طفولیت خورد از
حالا چی میخوایی؟
من مکتب خوش دیدم که باز هم به می دلیل میگم سرام ارسیوا کنه ما طلاق نمایم. مناسرا خونه مرتیبا کنم همه رخت لباس ما همه چیز هم تکمیل باشه چی از اینا کم نباشه و بازم ادامه زندگی میدم. از وقتی که شما آمدیم بعد از پدرم خیلی جنگ دعوا میکرد چه کردیم بندی شد 2 سال میشه که بندی شده بعد از او فعلا هم 4 ماه میشه که بندی شده یعنی 2 سال بندگیری فرستادم برای و همه کردم طلاق رم بگرفتم از خشاخ اینا اونا دارن زندگی خور میکنم من زندگی عادی خور شروع کردم خیاطی میکنم من مادرم یک براری دارم برار من فعلا به شرکت مایه بره کار میکنه دیگه کسی نی از ما که مثلا نوار خانه ما فقط مانه اول خدا بعد از ما برار مینه کلا نمینه پدرم کارم نمیکرد بله فعلا بیتر شده حالا که پیام نیم خب کل بیتر شده بخاطر از اینکه پیام که بوی جنگ دعوا میکرد و چه میکرد همون پولی که ما خیاطی کردی از ما میسون به این واسه از اون لحاظ خیلی خوب خونه دیگه مخیطی مانه که مثلا پرانه که بیارم 200 چه 300 چه 100 روپشه فعلا به می محل ما به می کوچی که ما داریم زندگی میکنه 5 6 تا خیاطیه ایتنی که فقط ما باشیم به خاطر از اینکه ما نادارتریم و ارزونتر میدیزیم برای ما خیلی میارم بیشتر خیاطی پیشمانه فعلا که از مکتب چیزی گفتن چون که تصمیم قطعی ندارم که برم از دارالفاز دیگه دیپلم خور میگیرم و دارالفاز وا میکنم.
I wanted to show that video because this is one that was from a year ago, and this is one of those videos that I could not do because I was devastated watching this because I cannot sit up here and fathom the fear, the terror, and the mental terror of a 9-year-old girl having to go as the bride of a 55-year-old deviant predator. Because that's what that is. A soulless, disgusting demon that would go by a girl and say this is his bride. 9 years old. 9 years old. It's sick. And it was said that all of this happened because they are trying to put sanctions on the country against the Taliban. No, it's not. It's to make access to little girls, children, easier for these deviants. Because there are other people from other nations that are into ex-tourism, including the disgusting deviant males that are in the country. And it makes me think about when my mother told me that someone in the family told her, no girl is safe with any male, regardless of family member or not. This is the most disgusting and deplorable thing that I have ever heard of and seen in my life. The suffering of children. People pretend like children is such a blessing. They love the children. They do anything for the children. There are people who would, but for the most part, you have these demons and these devils and these wicked deviants out here who are preying on the children. Because I've said about this situation, at 14 years old, there was a man older than him trying to lure me to talk to him. He was so disgusting to me at that time. And I've had since then, throughout my 20s, teens and 20s and 30s, old men, old men, men that could be my father and grandfather. They're not appealing in any way. And you saw the little girl, she didn't want to leave her mother. Listen, that couldn't be me. I know that they're living under a totally different system over there, and it's hell for women over there. And the deeper into poverty, the more exploitation that is going on. But you'd have to take my life before you take my child. And then the men, their fathers are doing this. I'd starve to death. But my question is, why don't the men sell themselves? Oh, I know what's going on over there. I don't care how they look down upon it. It's going on. It's just not spoken about. Why don't he go out there and sell his ass? I'm sure that there's a area, little district where that stuff goes on. He could do that before he sells his daughter. And then I've been looking for it, but I haven't seen the selling of sons. But it's okay to sell a girl or sell a woman's body. And then there's this cry about feminism, women wanting to be independent and having their own money. I would rather be looked at as a feminist, angry black bitch that is independent and a man hater than to be exploited like this, to be okay with something like this, because that's the end goal. You hear a lot of men talking about they want to go back to the Beaver Cleaver. Yeah, women could get hit in the mouth for talking back or having a grievance. She wasn't allowed to say anything if her husband was out there popping other women full of children and him having a second family. There was a lot going on, and it was kept in the family, and nobody's going to say anything about it. They want control. They have this thing with, they want a either slave or an indentured servant. Because when you look at the grand scheme of what they're saying, they don't like women. Even with the passport bros, when you look at the black sector of that, because the original passport bros are colorless, the black ones, first it was these black women, their mouth, they don't know how to treat a man, X, Y, and Z. I'm going to go get Becky. Now Becky has popped out a bunch of biracial children, and Becky is pissed at them, and the children are coming for their necks. Now they want to hop on a plane and go over to Brazil. Brazil, said, you ain't finna bring that BS over here. So now they're going to Thailand and the Philippines and all of that. I mean, at some point, when are you going to sit here with yourself and deal with yourself and know that it's you and you're the problem, because you're the common denominator out of all of it? When are you going to do better? Why do you want someone? What is this need in you for a woman to seem as if she's subservient under you? She has to serve you your plate first. She has to give you the big piece of chicken. She has to cook and clean in silence. She has to be a freak, but she has to be a nun in public. She has to know how to do all of these sexual acts very well to please you, but she has to be a virgin. I guess she's supposed to practice with fruits and vegetables. But if there were no laws in the United States and certain places, the same thing would be happening. It is happening, essentially. But it would be at 6-year-old girls, 9-year-old girls, 10, 11. This made my stomach turn. It made me sick because I know the fear. At 14, I knew the fear. Because this man one day came up behind me and touched me on the shoulder, and I literally wanted to jump out of my skin. So I know what that little girl is feeling, and it's 10 times worse. And she's pulled away from her mother and her siblings by her evil ass father. And I don't care. I don't care what situation they are in. The fathers are disgusting and they're infidels. And the men who are buying these girls are demons straight from hell. And this article says, child marriage before 18 is a human rights violation. Despite the laws against it, it's still practiced. A lot of these girls are experiencing domestic violence. They are experiencing complications in pregnancy and childbirth. These young girls, their children would be born stillbirth. They'll have the stillbirth because their body is not developed yet to perform this. And it says child marriage around the world, that 21% of young girls were married before their 18th birthday. 650 million girls and women alive today were married as children. That's under the age of 18. Where does child marriage happen the most? 37% of young women in sub-Saharan Africa are married before the age of 18. Which is disgusting. And they're not married to another 15-year-old. They're not married to another 18-year-old. They're not married to another 10-year-old. Oh no, these are old, nasty, disgusting, expired males. And they said in South Asia has the largest decline in the prevalence of child marriage, from 49 to 30%. That's not big enough for me in over 10 years. But there's still 110 million girls that will be married before their 18th birthday over the next 10 years. And it says marrying before 18 is harmful and should be banned, and no exceptions, which I agree. Now, when you talk about child marriage, and I do believe this because I've seen some comments talking about it, for Americans, they think it's happening in developed countries, third world countries, where there's economic hardship. Africa, Asia, and places like that. But child marriages is happening in the U.S. right now. And I had a whole argument with a man who was talking about a short on YouTube where there were generations of girls, and there were, I think, 6 or 7 of them that were still alive, and then they were trying to do the math to see how young they were when they had these children. And I was going on and with this dialogue saying, yeah, back then this was common. This happened in my family. A little 14-year-old girl, 13-year-old girl, 12-year-old girl was married off, and she's having children right here in the United States during that time. But again, it's happening today. And they said more than 200,000 minors were married in the U.S. between 2000 and 2015, and mostly girls. And they said it's in the rural areas and poorer areas in the United States. They say that a lot of these girls are convinced into doing this by their parents because they believe it'll bring less shame on them. That's insane. But these girls are separated from their friends and family. They say 50% are most likely to drop out of school, and early marriage doubles a teen's chances of living in poverty and triples the likelihood she will be beaten by her spouse compared to married adults. Getting married before the age of 18 with girls puts them in a cycle of poverty. This is seen within the community. This is what I'm talking about when I am against being a single mother. And we all know they're single married mothers, but having children and looking at the economic situation that you're in. If you can't comfortably take care of a child by yourself and you're having children with men in this community, you are playing Russian roulette with your life. You could end up in perpetual poverty. We have seen it in our families, generation after generation after generation of women having kids, having to raise them on their own, and they're struggling trying to pay the bills, struggling trying to raise the children, struggling trying to put food on the table. Delaware and New Jersey, they're the first states to outlaw marriage for anyone under the age of 18. And it says more than 1,000 15-year-olds have been married in Missouri since 1999. Even children aged 14, 13, and 12 are allowed to marry in Missouri. It's one of 25 states that have no minimum age required. There are people traveling from other states to Missouri to get married. And they said as far off as Oregon, Idaho, Utah, Florida, Kansas, Colorado, Illinois, Nebraska, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Tennessee. But they care about the children. They care so deeply about the children. They had to ban abortions, but they care about these children so much. That's affecting the children's right of life. But it's okay for an old deviant to go get a 15-year-old, take her to Missouri and marry her. She's 15, he's 55. She's 12, he's 32. And then what we say here in America, and especially in this community, oh, she's hot and fast. She's hot in the ass. She, is sexual. Okay, yeah. She's developing into a woman. So she is flirting with her sexuality. But that doesn't mean that she's ready for this. There are stages to it. There is no way a young 15-year-old girl should be engaging with anything with a 40-year-old man or a 30-year-old man, because he's going to treat her like he is her authority figure. He is going to lord over her, tell her what she can and can't do, literally have an adult and child relationship. And the sick thing is he's getting off on that. Pennsylvania and Massachusetts may be up next to ban child marriage. I wanted to show those videos because the 9-year-old and that 11-year-old child, that broke my heart to see that there's no protection. There's absolutely no protection. These girls are at the whim of the males around them. I do place blame on the mother, but she's indoctrinated within their system as well. I give her a bit of grace, but not much, because you're not going to sell my 9-year-old child to a 55-year-old man. I guess we're just going to lay here and starve to death. Or if you don't want to starve to death, then he can go sell his body. One of the adults are going to get to doing something, but that's not even an option. But I'll go ahead and leave it right here. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next one.